Hello and welcome to Wingin It, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at what I think is a key element of Wingspan's strategy, and that is tempo. Now, I talk a lot about tempo in my videos. I've never really gone that much into what it is or how it can affect your game. And I think it's such an important concept that's essential to understand for anyone who's looking to improve at the game. So here I'm going to be going over what tempo is, why I think it's so important, and how you can best manage it in your games. I'll also take a quick look at in-game scenarios so that you can see tempo in action and hopefully put these tips into practice in your next game of Wingspan. So what is tempo exactly? Well, think of it as the speed at which you're able to develop your boards by gaining resources and playing birds. It's most relevant in the early game, where getting those birds down and accelerating your board development and resource production is so key. Think of it like you're running a 100-meter sprint. You want to get out of the blocks as quickly as possible to put yourself in that strong position at the start. If you're slow to get going early on, it's going to be much harder to make up that ground later on in the game. You can also think about tempo as a resource in and of itself, just like food, eggs, and cards. Now, it might not be one that you see on your board or in your supply, but it's going to be there all the same. Certain decisions you make are going to help boost your tempo, while others are going to reduce it. Now, I might describe a particular move as a tempo play, meaning that it was taken with a view to maximize tempo above anything else. Generally, in the early game, you want to target these tempo plays in order to maximize your tempo gain as much as you can and get yourself off to that quickest possible start. In some cases, however, it might be worth sacrificing some of your tempo as a trade-off in order to gain some other type of benefit. For example, maybe you want to draw a particular bird from the tray, gain a certain type of food from the bird feeder, or go for the end of round goal. Now, knowing where and when to make these trade-offs is so important, and it's what separates good players from great players. In general though, especially if you're a beginner, just think about tempo and think about how you can maximize it as much as possible in the early game, as I say. Now that we've understood what tempo is, let's talk about why it's so important. And really this comes back to a core feature of Wingspan, which is that you only have 26 turns at your disposal. And to get the highest score possible, you need to be getting as much as you can out of each and every one of those turns, spending them as effectively as possible. Now, a tempo gain can result in saving a turn, which is where you achieve the same board state a turn sooner than you otherwise would have. This is just going to accelerate your resource production and potentially have a snowballing effect where you can get birds down more quickly, gain extra resources, and continue gaining even more tempo. It can also sometimes present opportunities to gain extra points through end of round goals by giving you extra turns and extra time to qualify, particularly in those end of round goals that can easily swing from one player to another, giving you the opportunity to pick up points. Importantly, saving a turn in the early game effectively earns you an extra turn in the end game, as all subsequent turns can be brought one turn sooner and you get that spare turn back at the end. And that is when you're going to be scoring the most points per turn. Maybe you're playing an 8 or 9 point bird, or maybe you're running a Grassland's engine for a similar score. That turn you saved in the early game isn't just worth those 1 or 2 points. It looks like it's going to be worth much more than that, as I say, in the end of the game. By mismanaging your tempo, you may end up wasting that turn in the early game, which is then going to mean you miss out on a valuable late game turn and lose potentially a lot of points. Now, if I had an egg for every time I finished a game of Wingspan and heard the phrase, "If only I had one more turn," then I'd have enough eggs to win every game of Wingspan that I ever play. More often than not, that extra turn that the player is looking for could easily have been saved through better tempo management in the early game. So we know what tempo is and why it's important, but how can we manage it? Well, a key element of tempo management comes down to planning your turns. Tempo can sometimes be gained through a single turn, but more often than not, instead it's gained through a sequence of turns. And thinking about the order and sequencing of your turns and the actions that you're taking is so key to being able to maximize tempo. Now, if you've got an idea of what you want to be doing in the next few turns, or the sort of board you want to be building, maybe there's a particular bird you've got that you want to play, or you're looking at an end of round goal that you want to qualify for. Now, you can use that information to guide your decision making for what to do not only on your current turn, but the next few turns. And by planning that sequence out, you can potentially gain some tempo in the process. Remember, it's not just about the actions that you're taking, but the order in which you take them. For example, if you don't have any cards in hand and you think you want to draw some cards and maybe get some food and then play some birds, it's generally a good idea to draw the cards first and then think about taking food later. Firstly, this is going to help guide you on which food you're looking to gain. For example, by drawing a specific bird, you now know the food cost and you know which food to target from the bird feeder. If instead you took food first, you might be left with the wrong food, resulting in the need for a second turn to go back to the forest and gain the right food you need. This is losing tempo and potentially wasting you a turn in the process. Secondly, drawing cards first might actually give you some spare cards which you can then discard in the forest and gain some additional food. And this additional food might then allow you to play the birds you want, or maybe some other birds in your hand, a turn sooner than otherwise possible, gaining you a little bit of tempo in the process and potentially saving a turn. Now, my advice is when taking a turn in the early game, always be thinking to yourself, what is it doing for your tempo? Is it helping it or hurting it? If it's hurting it, what are you gaining instead? And is it worth that sacrifice of tempo? Is there maybe a different move you could make first that is going to help save some tempo or potentially gain some back? It's always worth having these sorts of questions in your mind when making decisions on what to do, particularly, as I say, in the early game. And this is really going to help you manage your tempo in the most effective way and hopefully save some turns and score more points. Now we're going to end this video with a basic example, taking a look at an in-game scenario where just the little decisions you make can help change your tempo. Now suppose in this position you've got a few birds in your hand, you're looking to play them. You're obviously going to need to take food in order to get those down. You've also got a couple of brown power forest birds that you might think about playing first in order to get your forest going a little bit more quickly, get a little bit more food, and accelerate that board development. That's good wingspan in action. Now, birds that are particularly good in order to gain tempo are those which gain different resources from the habitat that you're activating. So for example, here we've got the chipping sparrow, and that's going to gain eggs in the forest when activated, which is a different resource to the food I'm already gaining. So not only do I get the extra food by having a bird down in my forest habitat, I'm now also laying eggs as well. This means I can play my second forest bird right away without needing a second turn to go and lay eggs. If instead I go and play the hawk first, this might look like a good tempo move. You know, I'm getting that brown power down, getting myself that extra bit of food and potentially a point through the brown power. However, you'll see I now actually have to spend another turn laying eggs before being able to play the next forest bird, and that's slowing me down in the process. So in fact, this is a bad tempo play. I should have played the chipping sparrow first in order to gain tempo by getting the birds down more quickly. If you compare these two approaches, you can see that the first method, by playing the chipping sparrow first, gets both the birds down a turn sooner than the second approach of going with the hawk first. This is good tempo management in action, helping to develop the board more quickly and getting off to that fast start. So those are my tips on tempo, what it is, why it's so important, and how you can best manage it. Hopefully you found that useful. Thank you very much for watching, and let me know your thoughts and your tips on tempo in the comments. If you want to see more videos like this, please do consider subscribing. It really helps support the channel, and I hope to see you in another video again very, very soon.